the Financial Survival Network, helping you to survive and thrive in the new economy. Get your free financial survival toolkit and find out where to buy gold and silver safely at great prices. Sign up at financialsurvivalnetwork.com. This is the Financial Survival Network.
1490 WGCH. This is Kerry Lutz, and you're listening to the Financial Survival Network, which is brought to you by Miles Franklin. They've been in business selling gold since 1990, and I'm a customer because when you buy, they ship. To find out more, go to milesfranklin.com or call them at 800-822-8080 and get a free quote. When it comes to storing your metals, where to keep them safe, and how to ensure that you will have access to them when and if you need them, the person to talk to is Nick Barisheff. He's president and CEO of Bullion Management Group. It's a bullion investment company, and they provide investors with cost-effective, convenient ways to purchase and store physical bullion. He's been at this a long time. He's studied every aspect of bullion purchase and storage. That's why we've got him on now, particularly to address the storage issues that owning metals will invariably create. Nick, welcome to the financialsurvivalnetwork.com.
Oh, my pleasure, Kerry.
Well, we're happy to have you on because this is a question that we receive quite often from you out there because you're concerned if you have a good amount of metals, you don't want them in their house. I don't keep them in my house. I have various places, which I won't share here, some of them in depositories and other safe places. So you've studied this and you've made a living out of it. Tell us briefly, what have you found, Nick?
Well, it's as you mentioned, it's an area of a great deal of confusion for many people in terms of once they can't store it at home. You know, clearly, if you're going to buy a couple of eagles and have it delivered and buried in your backyard and you're safe, that's no issue, and the issue of storage doesn't come up. The issue of storage comes up when it's a significant amount. So the first step, it's not a good idea to keep it at home for two reasons. One is the bullion then loses what is called its chain of integrity, meaning that once the bullion goes out of approved, LBMA member vault facilities, then it needs to be reassayed to come back in, because someone can take a bar and remelt it and redeliver a gold-plated tungsten bar. So as a result, it has to get reassayed, which is kind of the same thing as if you ask for delivery of a share certificate for a stock. There is a cumbersome process to get it back in and get it proven up and so on and so forth. So same thing for gold. The other reason, like home storage, is not a good idea. I don't know if you've read about it, but in Vancouver, a fellow couldn't find adequate allocated storage, and he decided to store $750,000 of silver bars at his house. And the word must have gotten out, or somehow people found out. So he had two police, or what he thought were police, come to his door, knock on the door, and because they're police, he let them in. They of course pistol whipped him, tied him up, and helped themselves to his $750,000 in silver, never to be seen again. So that's the kind of thing that is almost impossible to defend against, and the risks to your person, your family, and everything become very large if that's what you do. It doesn't matter if you're an expert, in terms of survival skills and guns and everything else. It just becomes impossible to do. The next thing in a storage dilemma for the larger investor is the fact that the vault facility, although it may have the physical security, the alarm systems, the guards, and everything else, in order to be comfortable with that, the vault facility should have no debt and be owned by the vault operator. And in many cases, it's a rented building with a mortgage on it. And you as a lawyer probably know the rights of lenders and landlords can override the contents that a tenant, has inside. So you could have issues with that.
In the States, that's less of a factor, but it's certainly a legitimate concern that you need to think about.
Right. The other thing that happens is, again, with a private facility, is the fact that they need to have a clear covenant to protect their clients and so on from bad clients. So although it's a painful and annoying process, what you want is the vault operator to do extensive due diligence on the client before he allows them into the vault. So in the UK, a vault operator had 3 facilities, and the authorities got it in their head that there was a lot of money laundering, drug dealing, and gun running using the vault facilities, and they did a raid on all 3 facilities and closed down over 6,000 boxes, drilled them open, and requested that the owners provide proof of what was inside and where they got it.
That's just out and out theft.
Well, that's right. But they did get a very unprecedented search warrant that instead of getting the right to open a single suspect's vault, they got the ability to raid the entire 3 facilities.
Well, that kind of brings up a point. We're living in a world that seems to be getting more and more lawless, so we all need protection against it, don't we?
Well, that's right. Now, in this case, the lawsuits are flying, but it'll probably take 10 years to settle. But the important part is that people should look at, and although it's an annoyance and it's a pain in the ass, you want the operator to have extensive background checks and enforce them so that you don't get painted with the brush of one bad guy. So that's where, when in our case, when we store the bullion with the Bank of Nova Scotia in Toronto for both the funds and the bars. The Bank of Nova Scotia is the largest bullion dealer in Canada by about a factor of 4. Taking all the other banks combined. So it's the major dealer of bullion. But we've been at this for 12 years. And over the years, we've spent a lot of money with, lawyers, accountants, and so on, reworking the agreements to where they offer the greatest degree of protection for the investors possible. So, nothing's perfect. But we've done agreements. So the first part of this is before you get into the allocated storage discussion, you actually have to own the bullion. And in order to own the bullion, you have to have specific identification on each and every bar. You can't own, ounces of bullion on a statement. Ounces on a statement is unallocated bullion, which is typically nothing more than an IOU from the issuer. You actually have to have title documentation, bill of sale, etc., same as you would for a house, a car, a boat, anything else. It's no different. Once you own the bullion and you have the documentation that says you own the bullion, then you can put it into storage, allocated or unallocated. Many people are tempted by unallocated because the storage costs are very low in unallocated, because the bullion bank or the lender or the custodian can lend it out and do with it as he wants. In an allocated account, they can't do anything with it without your permission. So that's where. So the issue is that allocated storage, insured allocated storage, will cost about triple the amount of conventional unallocated storage, and that's just the reality of the situation. The custody agreement needs to specify all that, needs to specify the insurance and so on and so forth. So this is the part that's missing. People think they own allocated bullion, and in reality they have nothing more than an IOU from the issuer.
Yeah, which one IOU is just the same as the other. You're always going to have counterparty risk, I guess, unless you're keeping it on your person. There's always going to be risk. So what do we do, Nick? What's the solution?
Well, like I say, the solution some of our wealthiest clients do is they spread their bullion ownership in various vaults around the world. And that depends on how rich you are. So that gives you a wider range. The bigger risk, to my view, is probably at some point government interference rather than these kind of issues, like whether it's from a taxation point of view or another expropriation as we had in you had in 1933. We didn't have one. Those are other risks. So there's no perfect solution. And the more you know about the economy and the state of the world, the more it becomes a concern.
That is the truth, isn't it? But we can only do what we can do. So it's going with organizations such as yours, where it's allocated and you have title to the metal, and spreading your risk out. So if one government gets it, hopefully another one won't. I can't see Canada, with its history, ever expecting citizens to surrender their precious metals, or Australia or Switzerland. But then again, We're living in this brave new world where I don't think you can say that you can be certain about anything.
Well, that's right. It's exactly the case. And the issue with it is some degree of confusion. Like in 1933, the U.S. didn't confiscate the gold they expropriated, but they gave you market price for it, what was market at the time. Initially, it was $20 an ounce, and then they devalued the dollar after a little while to where the gold was $35 an ounce. But they gave you fair value, just like if they were expropriating land. They just didn't take it. They gave you market value at the time.
That is true. And like you said, then they pulled the sneaky move and they devalued the dollar by 75%. So they effectively, if you'd held on to the gold and just decided to ride it out and take the risk, although there was one prosecution under that statute for all the time that it was in effect, you probably would have done okay. Or you could have kept your gold and just effectively changed your profession and become a jeweler, in which case you were allowed to have gold to make your products. But that was then. This is now.
Apart from the expropriation of 1933, the bigger problem was that they made it a criminal offense for U.S. citizens to own gold anywhere in the world. So you were breaking the law whether your gold was in Switzerland or in the U.S.
Well, that's why a lot of those coins kept on getting printed, even though they had old molds that they were using to rather not print it, but rather stamp the coins with old dates, so they would be collectibles, because collectibles were exempt from surrender. So there were a lot of ways out of it. Nobody really got prosecuted except one unfortunate soul, but it certainly, in theory, could happen again. Or you could have, I guess you could have windfall profit taxes. Some have postulated. There's a lot of ways that the government could try to come after us for it. And you can only protect against known unknowns, not unknown unknowns, as Donald Rumsfeld said, right?
That's right. Now, the other consideration, other than geographic distribution of your holdings, you can also diversify what your holdings consist of. So in our mutual fund, we purchase equal amounts of gold, silver, and platinum. So there's never been any kind of expropriation, punitive taxation, or anything like that on silver and platinum.
Exactly.
So, and the issue is, the reason I limit it to silver and platinum is because all three metals have histories of being money, and also they have extensive commodity uses. So silver and platinum, for instance, all those major uses are in areas where there is no replacement. So you've kind of got the benefits of a commodity and the investment and the monetary investment all in one. So that's why we recommend to people to diversify their holdings into gold, silver, and platinum, and somewhat diversify them depending on their wealth geographically. And
platinum certainly looks like a major buy right now.
That's right.
There's been gyrations. I guess, and you're probably more attuned with the market than I am, but, the current depressed state of the precious metals markets, and that's a relative term because if we're going back to 2000 or 1999, there's nothing depressed about these markets. But if you just invested funds in there, you'd basically want to kill yourself if you did it a year ago. So everything is relative to your time frame, but what's your feel on it? And understanding that no one can reasonably expect time predictions, and anyone who gives them, I just say, forget it, don't pay attention. But they're looking very oversold right now, and they're in demand, aren't they?
Well, absolutely, I agree with you, and it's very hard to predict prices, and I found it always takes longer than you think for things to happen. But I've been reluctant over the years to do price predictions. But this year in the fall,
smart man.
Well, but I've changed my mind though. And this fall, I'm bringing out a book called $10,000 an ounce gold. Now, the timing for that, I think, is plus or minus 5 years. And the reason it changed my mind is that up until the debt ceiling debate last year, and I knew it was going to be going up and so on. But when you kind of review that debate, it was clear that none of the politicians of any party had the intestinal fortitude or the will to really do something about this. They couldn't come to a solution. It went to a committee. They couldn't come to a solution. And now the money's being used up even before the election. So from that, it became clear to me that the money printing was going to go into hyperdrive, and no one was going to stop it. And it doesn't matter whether it's the U.S., Europe, Great Britain, Japan. It's the same condition all over the world, because that's the easiest thing for politicians to do. Oh. They can either,
yeah, you're spot on.
Renege on the promises that they've made to people, or they can print money that kind of goes unnoticed. They're going to print the money.
This is the whole flaw in the system, and it's what's potentially going to bring the thing down. God help us, because there is nobody that wants to stand up and change it other than you, me, and Peter Schiff, and a few others who are labeled as pretty much crazies, right?
Right.
Why would we think you can't create something out of nothing? I mean, it's done all the time. And we weren't even going to get into this, but I do appreciate you bringing it up, because this is an important point that you've raised, that it's print or perish, what I call print and pray. That's the strategy. So in that regard, I totally agree with you. And 10,000 or 100,000, it's kind of irrelevant.
Well, the numbers get astronomical when you look at being, hyperinflation that most people think about is 1920s Germany. And, when it's, at the beginning, and gold was 75 marks an ounce in 1921, and in 1923 it was 23 trillion marks an ounce.
I know. So, I've read the stories, and it's quite amazing.
Yeah, so 10,000 an ounce is probably ultra conservative, and the issue, the concern is that if it hits 10,000 an ounce, that will be just the beginning. And with gold, where many people get confused is, gold is not an investment in the sense of, say, the NASDAQ bubble. Okay, so you have all the attributes of a bubble, and then you have irrational exuberance at the end, and then the bubble pops and it crashes. That doesn't happen with money. With money, you're not going to get irrational exuberance, everybody piling into gold. You're going to get panic.
Yeah, exactly.
That's how fast the currency is declining, and there's no limit to how far it will decline.
Yep. I know exactly what you're saying. And it's going to be the same thing with silver, because gold will go up so high that the average man won't be able to afford an ounce. And then they'll be looking at silver. And again, when you get that panic phase, then it's game over. And the question is then, when do you go into other assets and pretty much dispose of your gold? We're going to talk about that another day, Nick. Nick, I really want to thank you for coming on. I totally enjoyed discussing this with you because you've thought about it in a methodical, scientific way, and you've come up with solutions. It's one thing for me as a pundit, and I hate that term, but I guess I am, to postulate problems, but I do try to work with solutions. But you actually have come up with the solutions and made a living off of them. So I think that's great for if you're looking to buy metals. Where would you go, Nick? Where would they find you?
Well, our website is bmgbullion.com. And on that website, we've got an enormous amount of articles, reports. I do a weekly newsletter. So they'll find a lot of useful information there that is all free. So we'll make that available to everybody. So in the hopes that we can promote the educational side of things and people will start to understand what's happening.
Hey, well, I totally am in your corner there, Nick. Thank you so much for coming on financialsurvivalnetwork.com. We're going to have you on probably towards the end of the summer when the action starts heating up. It's Indian wedding season, open to offers from Indian brides around the world. Minimum dowry is 4 kilos of gold, but just KL@KerryLutz.com. I'll accept all proposals.
Okay, my pleasure, Kerry.
Thanks so much, Nick. Take care.
Take care.